Right. Hi, everyone. I am Rachel Stevens. I am a senior analyst with RedMonk, and today I am very excited to have with me Jennifer Tejada. She goes by Jen. She is the CEO of PagerDuty, and Shawn Scott, the Chief Product Officer. And this is a conversation that I have been trying to manifest for a while, so I'm very glad that it has happened. And today we are going to be talking about kind of the growth and evolution of PagerDuty over the years. This is one of the companies that I first started covering as an analyst 6 years ago, and they have grown in some really interesting and unique ways in this product. And I would love to have Jen and Shawn both introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into some of the questions about what PagerDuty has done in the past few years and why that's interesting. So, Jen, would you like to kick us off?
Well, thank you, Rachel. We're thrilled to be here. We have worked with RedMonk as long as I've been with the company, which is I'm in my 6th year now. And to your point, it's been a really exciting and fulfilling and rewarding journey, I think, for all of us, because we did start out as a beloved single solution for on-call automation. And we've grown over the years to creating and pioneering a category for digital operations management. We look at for leading indicators, and we saw the market requiring a new era for operation platforms where you were going from being able to manage your businesses in a physical environment one way and in a digital environment the other way. And historically, that digital environment was secondary and sometimes a second-class citizen. And COVID especially has really ushered in an acceleration of a move to the world being digital first. And really on demand, which has meant that our customers, the largest enterprises in the world, the most innovative startups, all require an operations platform that can serve them in managing not just the work they anticipate, but unstructured, unpredictable, mission critical work that can stop a customer's experience in its tracks, that can impact revenue generation for the company, can ruin reputations overnight. And, frankly, can create a lot of thrash and inefficiency for the people that work in a business. And so really looking at operations more holistically and thinking about, how do we bring together all the complex technologies and services that underpin these great customer experiences and conveniences that you and I have learned to expect and appreciate from the brands that we love. That's just been a really fun journey. So we've gone from being this single product, it was really oriented for developers, to a multi-product platform. And as we expand that platform and expand our ecosystem to not only include more integrations, but to enable others to build on top of PagerDuty, we see PagerDuty becoming the operations cloud for the modern enterprise. And so we're never short on vision or ambition. And we really try and keep our users at the center of everything we do. When you're dealing with an unpredictable, stressful incident that's not only time critical, mission critical for your company, you need an application that's simple, easy to use, really intuitive, and just always works. And that's not an easy thing to accomplish. For anybody who ships software, they know that's the case. And so that continues to be a North Star for us, making our products and services easy for users to adopt and delightful for them to use, even if sometimes the circumstances they're using them in are not optimal.
Fair. I don't think anyone loves on-call, but I do think that it's good to have a vision around making it as painless as possible and as infrequent as possible. Shawn, I would love to hear, you are the first product officer at PagerDuty, so I'd just love to hear some about what actually brought you to the company and what you're doing.
Sure. So thanks for having us too. And have a UPS delivery person walking up, which means my dog is getting ready to go off any second here, probably. So been here about a year now, just had my 1-year anniversary. And so before PagerDuty, spent about 15 years at Amazon, working on a lot of the shopping experience. And then more recently, built and launched the Scout delivery robot, autonomous delivery robot. But when I started talking to Jen about as she mentioned, the kind of critical unplanned work that happens and, where PagerDuty is going. So if you think about, rewind, PagerDuty is about a 10-year-old company. And it really started by solving the developer operations problem around kind of really making sure your critical services are up. And when they go down, how do we orchestrate the work, get the right people notified and involved, and help reduce that outage time. And so started talking to Jen about how do we apply that to other parts of the business. And we have at PagerDuty, we actually have customers using us for security operations, for HR, for legal. You think about end of quarter and you need a contract routed around the company to subject matter experts, other eyes that may need to sign off on a contract, which is really critical work, right? Unplanned critical work. And so if you think about the spectrum of from ticket time, which is most of the back offices, legacy systems like IT systems run in ticket time, to at best they run in human time, which is can someone really hold that ticket and shepherd it around to all the people, to machine time. And so we're really thinking about how do we get more of that process pushed as far to the right to machine time as we can. So a lot of the roadmap that we have is moving companies along that spectrum. So one is reducing the amount of work you're having to do, and then automating as much as we can on the back end to really move the company forward faster. So when I was talking to Jen about these problems, I was looking at some of my internal processes and thinking about, wow, I could apply that to this situation and this situation. And why not take these kind of DevOps processes that have been really refined over the past decade and apply it to the rest of the business and really think much more beyond the concept of an incident and just look at work that happens and all the waste that occurs in terms of lost time throughout an organization. Like maybe someone who needs to do the work is out on vacation. So that work just sits there when it could be done by somebody else who's sitting in the next chair over. But, based on the ticket time world, that doesn't happen. And so when I started thinking about that world and how we could really change the way people work and how much speed we could add to businesses, I got more and more excited. So after 15 years of Amazon, I was like, I'm going to PagerDuty. And it's been a fun ride. So you talk about multi-product as well and the evolution of moving from kind of incident response to we now have, a handful of offerings and we're continuing to expand out to address all the problems that we're seeing that, applying the technology to all these different areas of the business.
Can we dig in a little bit more there in terms of, as you've thought about expanding your product offerings, have you thought about it primarily in terms of horizontally expanding your platform or kind of finding vertical solutions within a platform? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, it's a little of both. So, if you think about the work coming in, so we take all these signals coming in, we integrate with over 600 different systems to take event level data in. And we do work on that. And then we figure out, is this something we should alert on and tell people about? Or do we just kind of, put it to the side? And so when we take that look and start looking at the data flow, we thought, there's a lot of work happening here. And there's a lot of noise also happening here. So let's apply machine learning to that and get into event suppression or noise suppression in the category of artificial intelligence operations or AI ops. And what we see is that our customers that use those tools, they have about 1/3 less incidents just out of the box. And the companies that really take it to the next level almost cut their incidents by half. So you think about half the amount of work is now hitting the desk of people that are already, underwater from, everything from security issues that they have to worry about, vulnerabilities to PII issues to just kind of running their service and availability. So it's been kind of a natural evolution horizontally to look at every aspect of what we have to really help focus on how do we reduce that outage time. Our other product, we launched customer service operations, CS Ops. We launched that last year. And it's another signal that we didn't have. Often your metrics in aggregate will look okay, but maybe there's a class of customers or a segmentation of customers that are all having a problem. If these kind of several things are true, then something doesn't work for them. But in aggregate, everything looks good. Your system's up and maybe it's 4 nines, 5 nines, but maybe if we slice to the finest grain of customers, we'd see, wow, this whole pocket of customers is offline or just broken. And that's where customer service operations comes in. So you can think of them as the eyes and ears. And one of my lessons learned at Amazon, I had Jeff Bezos tell me, when the anecdotes disagree with the data, the anecdotes are usually right. And that's the customer experience, the customer service who has those anecdotes, and they're feeding them back into the developers to say, you know what, the service says it's up, but this pocket of customers or these customers are seeing more reports about this system not working or this and maybe down. And so that's another signal for the developers to say, okay, let me dig in and see what's going on and maybe go a little bit deeper than what the aggregate metrics are showing. But again, it just shows that kind of working along that spectrum of where are the issues and how can we compress that time and get, more towards the machine time.
Super interesting. So I'd love to strategically dive in as you've expanded this market. Jen, how have you thought about, as you've kind of moved into adjacent markets? I think one of the ways that we commonly say this is like the build versus buy question, but you've done it both ways. I think you've expanded your core offering some. You've made acquisitions like Rundeck, and you've also done things that have resulted from partnerships, like your partnership with Salesforce. So how are you kind of approaching this organic versus inorganic growth question?
Yeah, it actually starts for me with what our customers need. And, one of the things that I think is a truism around modern businesses and modern software solutions is they need to be open and interoperable. The days of being able to build a proprietary enterprise platform that you have to pay millions of dollars with systems integrators to plug things into in a customized, highly specific way are behind us. And, likewise, I would say most modern users expect a consumer grade experience in the apps and the tools that they look for. So, first of all, like from a strategic perspective, I always think about how do we make sure that PagerDuty is open to the ecosystems that require, operations management. And likewise, how do we make sure that we're creating and building an ecosystem that all of the other software environments or software-enabled environments can plug into? And that's been a really, I think, important decision for our company to make it really easy and simple to plug into PagerDuty, to integrate to PagerDuty, to connect a data feed into PagerDuty, and to connect PagerDuty into other platforms or applications that you rely on. It's been a business advantage. And likewise, I think it's fast becoming an expectation from large enterprises and startups. And so, that was a starting point. And then I would also say that we listen really hard to not just what our customers are saying, but what we see around the corner for them. And we have the benefit of having a very diversified customer base, from some of the most innovative tiny startups you never heard of to 9 of the Fortune 10 customers. And by having that many different and diverse customers across different industries, from, computer and internet to, traditional software, all the way through to travel and media, very traditional essential industries, industrials, the auto industry, healthcare. When you have this diversity in your customer base, you see a lot, because these customers are all in very different places on what we call the digital maturity continuum. Like, where are they in terms of recognizing that they've got challenges within their operational environment? Where are they in their journey to the cloud? Where are they in moving from just being responsive and reactive to being predictive and proactive, right? How much are they reliant on manual processes versus how much can they automate, using off-the-shelf solutions? Where are they in their machine learning experience and their machine learning curve? By having that diversity, you see a lot. So you can look at what one segment of your customer base is doing and anticipate for another, right? You can see how your early adopters are applying technology and the problems they're facing ahead of what some of your more mature traditional customers might be experiencing. And that's allowed us to have, I think, very good signal around, what are the next growth opportunities for us? And likewise, what are the next big set of problems that our customers needed to solve? And, nothing was more true than in the Rundeck acquisition, where we believe automation is going to continue to be a requirement for our customers in not just the incident response life cycle, but across lots of different use cases throughout our customers' experience. And so Rundeck was a really good cultural fit for us. It's a great product. It's loved by its customers. It's relatively easy to deploy, like PagerDuty was. There were a lot of similarities. And the most exciting thing about Rundeck for me is we're only tapping the surface of what Rundeck can do. As Rundeck becomes a more ubiquitous automation solution within the PagerDuty platform, it can be applied to lots of different problems outside of the incident response lifecycle for our customers. And so to me, that I see that as breadth and an opportunity to expand the surface area of the problems that we solve for customers. Likewise, I've done a lot of M&A in my career, and acquisitions and their success really come down to execution. If you can get the culture fit right, if you can get the strategic product fit right, if the people are of great caliber, that's all great, but you have to execute really well on that integration and on bringing those cultures together on behalf of the employees and your customers. And so we try not to bite off more than we can chew. We wanted to really get the Rundeck acquisition right. We're still working through that, but it's going, it's ahead of plan. It's going really well. I'm really excited with what I'm seeing and what it's added, not just to our products and services that we offer our customers, but the Rundeck team's amazing. They're incredible. And they've brought a lot of new ideas and new ways of thinking. They're very entrepreneurial. They tell us when we're acting like a stupid big company. They're integrating really well into our business from the leadership all the way down to individual contributors. And that gives us the confidence, to go after the next thing, so to speak. On the flip side, there are certain things where we believe we have very strong subject matter expertise and the right dev teams and product teams that we will invest in innovating, something on our own. And that continues to be the majority of the products and services that we bring to market. And I think that also is what inspires, our employees and our customers. And the last thing that I would say is I'm a huge believer in early design partnerships and, working with our customers open and collaboratively, getting their input into some of our ideas, allowing them to participate in experiments we're running. And that's where partnerships like Salesforce, evolve. It starts with a conversation. They trust us to solve one set of problems and they start sharing some of the other challenges that they have. And, sure enough, that conversation kind of snowballs. And the next thing you know, you find there's a really great fit, both from a product perspective and from a go-to-market perspective. But again, I don't believe, I think a lot of companies make the mistake of being kind of an inch deep and a mile wide and not really generating any value. So you'll see we're pretty choiceful about the partners we go to market with and about the customers that we co-innovate with, so to speak.
Makes sense. I loved all that conversation, and I want to dig in just a little bit more at the very beginning when you were talking about the ecosystem and your integrations. And I'm curious, as you started to expand into other markets, into adjacent markets. So I think the examples that came to mind for me is both you and some of the data sources that feed into PagerDuty are both tackling like the event suppression space, or automation is another place where you are probably starting to collide against people that you didn't previously collide against. And so I'm curious how the ecosystem dynamics change as you start to evolve your product.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's actually less competitive tension or overlap in the product than there is in the messaging. There's a lot of messaging confusion, I think, between observability companies and monitoring companies and ticketing and workflow companies and what we do. PagerDuty, to some extent, it sits above all that as a superset because we're ingesting data from all of those different types of organizations, including security, ticketing platforms, CRM, cloud services, cloud providers, cloud, monitoring, et cetera. And we're bringing that all together, consolidating it, and then correlating it using, our proprietary data set, but also our machine learning models to get to, kind of a single view of the world. But then we also action that, right? So we then orchestrate that work to the right 5 or 6 people across multifunctional teams. We then automate the triage and response process leveraging Rundeck. So we have more of a full value chain perspective as opposed to just the diagnostic or just the event management. And I think sometimes it's the sum of the parts that is more differentiating than each of the parts by themselves. And, most of the types of companies that you mentioned are customers of PagerDuty because it's actually hard to replicate what we do at the level of fidelity and reliability and availability that, we deliver, and we can always improve. But that's something that we've invested in significantly for more than a decade from both an architecture strategy perspective and an ops engineering standpoint as well. And so when you sort of look at that all together, I don't worry too much about the competitive overlap because it really starts with, who has customer trust, and then who do those customers trust to do more for them? And that's where I think we've been particularly successful. And frankly, I think there's always going to be a little bit of, overlap on the edges because, to my point earlier, we're using open APIs to allow people to find their own ways to solve problems by connecting, whether you're connecting PagerDuty to Slack and Datadog, or you're connecting PagerDuty to AWS CloudWatch and another monitoring service, et cetera. Like, these things are working together. And every time that happens, the PagerDuty platform is learning on behalf of the users that it serves. So for me, the bigger and richer the ecosystem, the better it is for our customers. And one of the best testaments to how important our ecosystem is about a third of those integrations are built by our community as opposed to built by PagerDuty engineering. And I think that is an area you'll continue to see us invest in and double down on. When I joined the company, we had about 115 integrations, and we're now 6-7 times that.
I guess the polite thing I'm supposed to say at this moment is that I want to be respectful of your time, but I don't want to be respectful of your time at all. I wish we could totally keep talking. I have so many more questions. But I guess I will leave it with one last question, and I will be respectful of your time, even though I don't want to be. I'd love to just hear, to wrap up, could you share your vision of where you think the market is headed and how PagerDuty fits into it? I would love to hear you both, just your take on where this is all going.
Yeah. Shawn, why don't you take a crack at it and then I'll wrap it up. How does that sound?
Sure. So I think kind of some of the things I was talking about, how do we apply this to the rest of the organization? And what that means is we need to build more flexibility into our system and start building, you can almost think of them as recipes of work, right? So to really take this much more broader, that flexibility coupled with the recipes, we already have the ability to connect to everything with the 600 integrations. We're already connecting everybody in the organization, as evidenced by all of our customers using it for all of these different use cases. We're getting more flexible by the day, and we're starting to automate more of their work. And so those 4 pillars, you can really think about changing the surface area of how organizations do work for all their needs, beyond just even the kind of the unplanned critical work.
Yeah, and I would add to that, when you look at it from a macro perspective and where the business world is going and where consumers are going, consumers are just going to get more and more demanding. And it's getting harder and harder as a consumer brand to differentiate your products and services and your position. And you're heavily reliant on digital assets, digital, virtual services and hardware services like this guy. When it doesn't go well for any small reason, that consumer has the opportunity to quit really quickly. And, there's an old saying, trust is won in droplets and lost in buckets. And so I think digital operations becomes the foundation for customers to operationalize trust with their end consumers, for the businesses we serve, to ensure that all of the work that they go to build products and services and advertising and acquire audiences is paid off through delivering that digital or omnichannel experience every time. And that's getting harder and harder, because even with microservices and serverless, and people working remote, everything's more distributed, everything's a little more complicated. And so you can't rely on people, on manual efforts, on tickets and queues. You actually need software and AI to help you manage these things more effectively. And I think we're really well positioned to win in that environment, because we're the only platform that can manage people, workflows, and events from across the ecosystem in milliseconds in real time. And that's the way work is showing up in the future. The future of work is unpredictable, unstructured, time critical, and distributed. It doesn't show up on your calendar. It doesn't show up neatly in your team of coworkers. It shows up in the middle of the night on a Saturday. And yet it could really change the arc of a business if you don't address it quickly. So I'm excited about the opportunity in front of us. And we only win because our customers are successful and because our employees are engaged and fulfilled. And so I'm just really appreciative that I get to work with smart people who are committed and really well aligned to our purpose. And likewise, that our customers hold us to a super high standard, because that makes us better every day.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for your time. I really appreciate you spending the afternoon with me, answering my questions and talking strategy, because it was lovely.
Absolute pleasure, Rachel. Thanks so much for having us.